Franco Colapinto is once again stealing the spotlight in Formula One circles after Jack Doohan's latest downfall on the streets of Miami. The young Australian struggles were no secret. His team had been keeping a close eye on him since the season opener, subtly signaling that his seat wasn't safe. Now, following yet another costly crash, speculation is reaching a boiling point. Has Doohan just competed in his final Grand Prix for the French outfit? More importantly, is Colapinto genuinely preparing to step into the Alpine cockpit at Imola, or is this all just an elaborate smokescreen to pressure Doohan further? The whispers are getting louder, and they're not just coming from fan forums. Several insiders suggest that the decision has already been made. Doohan's opening to the season has been anything but impressive. He remains one of the few drivers still scoreless in the championship, and his recent Miami blunder, where he not only binned his own car but also compromised Liam Lawson's race, was a stark reminder of how merciless this sport can be. F1 doesn't tolerate underperformance. Your time is limited, your seat is temporary, and if you're not delivering results, someone else is already warming up in the simulator. Unless, of course, your name is Lance Stroll. According to several race weekend reports, a swap involving Colapinto and Doohan could already be in motion, an idea that's had the backing of none other than Flavio Briatore for quite a while. Ironically, Miami marked the first time Doohan actually outpaced his teammate, Pierre Gasly. But the cruel reality is that one decent qualifying isn't enough to erase a string of disappointments. The damage might already be done, and if Alpine cuts him loose, it's hard to imagine another team knocking on his door anytime soon. Meanwhile, Franco Colapinto has proven he's capable of shaking things up. His brief stint at Williams last year, stepping in for Logan Sargent, showcased flashes of raw speed and racecraft. But it wasn't without drama. His crash in Brazil, in particular, raised serious questions about his readiness for a permanent seat. He's talented, no doubt, but still a bit rough around the edges. Before Alpine can consider him a full-time option, he'll need to tighten up his race discipline. Still, when a figure like Briatore publicly vouches for you, that endorsement holds weight. If Colapinto can harness that support and convert it into on-track results, a long and successful F1 career could lie ahead. But let's not lose sight of the broader picture. Was Alpine's dreadful start to the season entirely Doohan's fault? Realistically, no. Alpine has been one of the biggest disappointments of the year, consistently outperformed by nearly every other team on the grid. The car lacks pace, reliability is shaky, and the team's trajectory is heading in the wrong direction. Replacing a driver might spark change, but it won't fix a fundamentally broken package. So whether Colapinto is about to become the next big thing or merely a pawn in Alpine's internal game of scapegoating remains to be seen. One thing is clear. In Formula One, patience is a luxury, and survival demands performance. Yesterday. Despite the swirling chaos at Alpine, one thing remains clear. Pierre Gasly has quietly but consistently outperformed Jack Doohan across the 6 Grands Prix they've both contested so far. The scoreboard reads 5-1 in favor of the Frenchman, with sprint races being the only area of parity at 1 apiece. On average, Gasly has maintained a gap of 0.367 seconds per lap ahead of Doohan, a seemingly minor difference, but in a hyper-competitive era like today's, that margin can be the difference between finishing 8th or falling to 14th. Still, it was the Miami crash that truly turned up the heat on the young Australian. Cameras caught Doohan being comforted by his father after the race, and when asked about the incident, the rookie insisted he had nowhere to go. In his words, it was just a racing incident. Try telling that to Liam Lawson, who's also had his fair share of struggles. First with Red Bull, and now with Racing Bulls, still trying to break into the points after being sidelined following just 2 race starts last year. Reflecting on what could now be the final race of his short-lived F1 career, Doohan remained defiant. "I haven't seen the replay yet, so I don't want to jump to conclusions," he said. "But it felt like I got squeezed going into turn 1. There was no space, and contact was inevitable. The puncture damage was brutal. I was sinking. I don't even know how to describe it. The front left gurney or something just got wrecked. We're not here to create debris or end up with a wrecked car. It's been a long road to get back here. I really hope this moment doesn't define me. Well, the sad truth is, he may not get the chance to bounce back. Because, according to insiders, Flavio Briatore has already orchestrated a potential replacement plan. In Formula One's cutthroat ecosystem, there's no patience. Either you hit the ground running, or you're labeled a liability. And while the delta between Gasly and Dan might only be 0.3 of a second, it's the consistency, and the crashes, that tell the real story. Speed means nothing if you can't finish a race. To make matters worse, Alpine recently signed another promising youngster, Paul Aron. The Estonian talent, once a part of the Mercedes Junior Academy, lit up Formula 2 last year with his pace and racecraft. Now signed on as Alpine's reserve driver, Aron isn't just a backup plan. He's a serious candidate for a future seat. And judging by how things are unfolding, that future might arrive as soon as Imola. So far, Alpine has remained tight-lipped about any official changes to its driver lineup. Until they release a formal statement, all we can do is analyze the cold, hard data, and it doesn't paint a flattering picture for Doohan. As for Colapinto, although he's officially listed as Alpine's reserve driver this season, his contractual rights are still owned by Williams. That means the Grove-based team can call him back whenever they please. The irony? Colapinto is a graduate of the Williams Driver Academy. He was groomed through their system, only to find himself swept into the storm created by Doohan's unraveling at Alpine. For now, though, there's no clear path back to Williams for the Argentine talent, at least not in the short term. Yet his name is right back in the headlines, absorbing all the attention originally directed at Dan's downfall. Interestingly, Sky F1's Ted Kravitz recently highlighted something many overlook. Dan has actually been instrumental in optimizing Alpine's car setup. Gasly started from the pit lane because he changed his suspension to a much more Dan-style setup, Kravitz explained. Jack has been nailing his car configurations, helping the team improve overall balance and drivability. According to the veteran analyst, even Gasly admitted that his original direction had been off, and once he mimicked Dan's setup, his performance improved dramatically. So perhaps not everything is bleak for the embattled Aussie. There's genuine technical merit in his approach, even if it hasn't translated into points or podiums. But in the unforgiving world of F1, good setup work isn't enough. It's a results business. And Alpine? Well, they've become a revolving door for drivers and executives alike. Since Fernando Alonso walked out in 2022 to join Aston Martin, Alpine's internal chaos has only intensified. The Oscar Piastri contract debacle was a PR disaster that ended in legal threats and embarrassment. That domino effect led to the firing of team principal Otmar Safnauer and a sweeping overhaul of upper management. Even Alain Prost, the four-time world champion and once a key advisor to the team, was pushed aside in the restructuring carnage. What we're witnessing is not just a team in trouble, it's a structure in collapse. Colapinto, Doohan, Gasly, Aron. They're all pawns in a game where Alpine is scrambling for stability. But when the house is burning, swapping out the furniture won't save it. So, when people start leaving left and right with barely any notice, it sends a clear message. Something isn't right. It paints a poor picture of the team's internal state. Even Bainan, once considered part of the long-term project, made the move to Haas, clearly concluding there's no real future for him in this so-called French dream of fielding homegrown talent anytime soon. Still, it's worth acknowledging that Jack Doohan has shown flashes of real pace. Maybe 7 races just aren't enough to truly evaluate whether he belongs at this level, especially when his teammate has also struggled to score points consistently. If we were dealing with a scenario like Williams in 2023, where Alex Albon carried the team with almost all the points and Logan Sargent barely registered with a single point the entire year, then sure, the criticism would be justified. But that's not the case here. As it stands, Alpine sits on a measly 7 points, all of them courtesy of Pierre Gasly. And while many expect this to turn into a carbon copy of that Williams dynamic, that outcome isn't guaranteed. Let's not forget, there are two other rookies on the grid who have yet to make it onto the scoreboard, Borletto and Lawson. In Lawson's case, it's even more complicated. He had his brief shot in one of the fastest cars on the grid and still failed to produce results. Yet, it's fair to argue that maybe he's not as poor a performer as the media has made him out to be. Despite all that, it seems Flavio Briatore has already made up his mind. The terms haven't changed since day one. The pressure is on from the moment you sign that contract. Deliver results, or pack your bags. The team wants someone who can not only hold their own but actively challenge Gasly and help push Alpine up the standings, ideally back into midfield contention. This is no small matter. Looking ahead to 2026, Alpine is set to become a Mercedes-powered team. And if the whispers in the paddock are to be believed, every car fitted with a Mercedes power unit could receive a significant performance boost, Alpine included. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean they'll be challenging for wins overnight, but it would be reasonable to expect them to become a consistent top-5 threat with such firepower at their disposal. But here's the catch. To take advantage of that opportunity, Alpine will need two reliable, high-performing drivers. No passengers. No excuses. Just raw pace and results. So, with all that context in mind, what's your take on the rumored Colapinto swap? And more importantly, do you believe this move will make strategic sense in the long run? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And while you're at it, don't forget to check out the video currently on your screen.